saying I'll take the headphones off. We'll do the intro,
And then
we'll bring
yeah,
him in.
yeah, let's do that.
All right, so stand by, Travis.
Currently standing by.
All right. What's going on? I'm Scott from Koenig. Jared's here too. And welcome to another episode of the Behind the Wheel podcast. Yeah, you know, it's that thing we do on Wednesdays. Nothing
Do
big.
we really?
Yeah.
Every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
At 3 p.m.
3 p.m.
Live.
That's how we do it. Anyhow, listen, before we get into our guest, which is going to be, well, that's not the right word. Before we get on to our guest, that's still not working out. Before we introduce our guest, that feels better. I want to tell you about a giveaway that we're running right now. So if you are checking this out and it is in the year 2021 in August, we're having a giveaway this month. All you have to do is go to store.konigwheels.com. Yep, that's right. Yep. And then you're going to buy a shirt. And if you buy a shirt, we're going to pick one person at random to be eligible to win a set of wheels. It's that simple. Go buy a shirt.
You could get a set of wheels for how much is the shirt?
It's like $19.99.
So you could basically get a full set of wheels.
It's quite the deal.
That's
quite
something.
the deal. Anyhow,
that's like $5 a wheel.
That's a giveaway. Everybody that says, "Oh, you give away," well, this is a giveaway. It's another giveaway. We've done like 3 in the past 3 months.
It's true.
Listen, if you're snoozing, it's you. So anyhow, moving on to our guest. Listen, this is one of my faves. You know, Travis REEDER is a pro Formula Drift driver, and we've been with Travis for a number of years now. It's got to be like 4 or 5, something like that. And you know, we've kind of been with him as he's climbed the ranks quickly, very quickly. But as he went from Pro 2, which is, you know, what Pro Spec I guess is today, and after he kind of took that on, then he went in. You know, he's was 2 years. No, yeah. Then he made his way up to pro, and that's where he is now. And he's been there for a few years. And what's interesting, well, let's bring him in.
All right.
Travis, you there?
I am. What's up, guys?
Oh, this is fantastic. So good. Man, you're chilling. Look at you.
I know. I'm relaxing, man. Got home from a wild weekend. I'm still been working, but it's nice to sit at home for a day or two and at least just like cool off before I have to continue with the madness.
Yeah, it's probably, I don't want to say, it goes from like super hectic to just, you know, getting your bearings back, right?
Yeah, an FD weekend is always a lot. It's a lot of prep. I guess an FD round that's 2 days long is probably 2 weeks of prep, and then you get the rig back, and then it's another, you know, week of re-prep. So it's always a lot more work than just those 2 days we're at the track. So it's nice to kick it for a day or two after all of the madness.
So now, would you say, because last year was kind of a odd year, right? You guys did double events, double headers, 4 locations because of the COVID situation. Was that must have been a nightmare as far as prep and running the car, just kind of doing the double time and having all that mechanical wear and tear in between prep?
Yeah, there was goods and bads to that schedule. Obviously the COVID year, I guess we're kind of still in another COVID year a little bit, but the 4-round year last year was weird. So obviously we had 4 rounds, but it cut costs for travel and everything for the teams and saved some money there, logistics wise. But then on top of that, you get to the round and yeah, like you said, you have to run the car for 2 full competitions back to back, which is a lot. It's not any more runtime than you'd see in a normal season, but the fact that if something happens, you have no time in between to fix it other than just overnight for the next day. So that's a tough part. If there was any big mechanical failure, if you ended up having to do like a motor, a trans, rear end, something like that, something big, you basically had overnight into the next day to fix it and get it going so that you could make the next round essentially. So yeah, it was wild, but there was goods and bads, and I'm just glad that this year we're hitting all 8 stops and for the most part have a bunch of fans in the stands. So that's always a good time.
Yeah, so you just finished your local event to you, right? You're at Seattle, Evergreen. I guess that's your home track for better or for worse, right?
Yep. Yeah, for the most part, I'm like 2.5 hours south of Monroe, which is where Evergreen Speedway is. I did Pro-Am there, and I've done some off-season testing and the occasional event up in that area. So it is the closest Formula D track to me. So I guess you could consider it the home track. I got my Pro 2 license there through Pro-Am. So, but surprisingly, I haven't driven the track a whole lot as far as the 5/8 bank goes. We did 2 5/8 rounds in Pro-Am, 1 Pro 2 round on the big bank out of the 2 years, and then this would be my 3rd year going back for Pro 1. So, I mean, I've only driven that layout a handful of times, even though it's relatively close to me. So
that layout is new though for this year, right?
So the layout from this year is the same as 2019 or 2018 layout. All they did was they extended the last turn back to the wall, essentially. So before, that's how the track was originally set up, is you come around the 5/8 and you come into the power alley. There's either a touch and go or an outer zone, and then another outer zone, and then you transfer back around. So you're pointing towards the stands, and instead of transitioning early, staying away from the wall, they make us do like a really tight hairpin and run the zone right up against the wall where the fans are kind of standing there. So that's my preferred layout for that, and I'm glad they brought it back this year. But the last 2 years, they were kind of making us turn out early and stay away from the wall, so like debris didn't fly in. I don't know what changed, but I'm sure people standing at the fence got a mouthful of fiberglass multiple times.
That's famously where JTP crashed into, who was it? I think it was
Vaughn.
Yeah, right. The 2 Mustangs. So that was a pretty aggressive hairpin turn to sort of end that run. So yeah, I do like the newer layout a little better. It's a little less aggressive.
Yeah, last year. So that's happened multiple times actually, if I can recall. JTP and Vaughn last year, there was a pass. Well, Vaughn tried to pass, and JTP didn't let him pass, and they pretty much drove each other into the wall, which was pretty entertaining. And then a few years back, there was, I believe it was like Grunwald and McQuarrie. This was like maybe 4 or 5 years back, and that was another one where they straight up just, one car just drove the other car straight into the wall and pushed him into it because they got a little heated. So there's always some drama there because it's the fastest turn in FD at the beginning, and then you transition and eventually get into the slowest turn in FD. So I guess it probably matches speed with like the last turn in Long Beach or one of those. But either way, you're going as fast as you possibly can, and you end up going as slow as you possibly can in that course. So there's always bound to be some carnage.
I actually have super slow motion footage of that last hit that he was talking about with McQuarrie when I was shooting the various Formula Drift rounds.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, was that where Danny George flipped over on his roof, or was that Texas?
That was Texas.
Yeah. I think that it's interesting because when in Seattle, it's so exaggerated because of that one turn, that hairpin, when you start coming back toward the wall, because you scrub so much speed there. If you're offline coming off that bank at all, It's almost like unsalvageable.
Yeah. Um, yeah, how you come off outer zone one off of the 5/8 bank depicts the entire rest of the course. Because if you come off the bank early and drive in and miss outer zone two, then it makes it hard to cross the track for three. If you come off outer zone one late and go wide on outer zone two or long in outer zone two, you can't slow down and get into outer zone three in time. And then at that point, everything messes with your line you draw through inner clip one. And then the line you draw through inner clip one really messes with how you drive through outer zone four. So there's like the track might not look super technical, but it is extremely technical considering how you have decreasing radiuses, off camber turns. There's some bumps in there coming into the power alley. The power alley is super skinny. So coming in super fast and having to just stare at a concrete wall and transition the car and slow down at the same time and hit your marks on time is really tough. So this is probably one of the more difficult tracks in the series, that's for sure, which is why I mean, the highest qualifying score was a 95, and I think the closest one to that was a 92. And then there was like some 90s and then in the 80s. So it's not a very high scoring track because it's really hard to drive. So it always makes for good fun and makes for the judges can really see when someone makes a mistake because of how difficult the track is. So it's good. It's a fun one.
I'd imagine in certain runs after practice, there becomes a little bit of muscle memory that you do like in the course of your run. But like take me what it looks like from your starting chicane into that first turn through the finish line. What is the mentality? Like you come out of the gate and like what are you thinking as you approach the initiation?
Yeah, so I've kind of changed my mentality about this year. I have a brand new car, obviously.
Yep.
This new M3 is amazing, and I feel a lot more comfortable in it. And the car has a lot more to give me as well, a lot more speed and a lot more drivability. So I kind of just stopped caring and stopped thinking about what I have to do and just trust myself that I've been doing this for 11 years now. And like in the moment, I just trust myself to make the right decision and try not to overthink things. So pretty much I just line up at the start grid, look over at the other car and, give them one of these and ready to go. And then, I mean, it's through the chicane, first, second, third, fourth, upwards of 90 miles an hour on entry, and we're clutch kicking in, so you're gaining a little speed there. And then you ride the wall. It's half of a 5/8 oval, so it's a solid like 8 to 10 seconds wide open throttle riding the wall. And the higher you stay, the better off you are. If you make a mistake and you're real close to the wall, the crash doesn't hurt as much. So you just stay as close as you can. If you kind of pedal down low and make a mistake, you hit the wall twice as hard. So you stay high, run everything out to the end. As soon as you come through outer zone one at the end, you want to like add angle and scrub your speed so you can get the car pointed into the power alley. As soon as you get it pointed into the power alley, you got to get your tires into outer zone two, which is the non-wall side of the power alley. So it would be like driver's left. And you got to get into that on time. And at the same point, when you get into that zone, you're staring at the concrete wall to driver's right, kind of nosed in. So at that point, you have to stay on throttle, transition at the wall, and then get on the brakes, let the car slow down through outer zone three. Outer zone three on the wall is a decel zone. So you got to get the car slowed down. At that point, you're looking at inner clip one because you got to hit your mark. Because in the drifting stuff, like everything happens so fast that like you drive where your eyes are pointing subconsciously, whether you're trying to or not. So as soon as you hit a mark, you're staring at the next one to try to hit that one. So yeah, come through outer zone three on the wall, staring at inner clip one, try to drive in and not late apex it, but get into it smooth where the judges have the lines painted. And then after that, you just facing at another wall with a bunch of speed on throttle transition. And then get on the brakes, try to stay as wide driver's left as you can so it drives you through outer zone four at the wall so you're not coming at it square. You can kind of like swipe the wall from the side. So you come into outer zone four as wide as possible and just stay on the gas and don't lift. Otherwise, you crash really close to everybody and it's embarrassing. and then yeah, exit wide to your left. You hit a little jump coming onto the 3/8 bank out of the finish line, and then that's when I wake up and I'm not blacked out anymore.
Man, it's crazy to be able to do that off of muscle memory. I mean, I don't want to say muscle memory. It's not used in the right sense, but to do it off of instinct and experience.
Well, and just to sort of segue a little bit, I think this is a good transition, pun intended, based on the last part of the explanation that he was giving. Travis, what if you could tell me what was it like to drift around that last turn this year, seeing fans versus the previous year? Was there any different feelings that you had going on?
Yeah. So last year's events were weird because it ended up being like it was like going to a private drift day with all of your friends in your most expensive stuff.
Yeah.
um, so it was kind of weird last year having no fans in the stands and everything being on live stream because you really felt like it was hard to feel like you were putting on a show, for anyone. And seeing so many people at Evergreen this weekend, it was sold out. So I don't know like the limit was, but it had to have been 20,000 people throughout the weekend, something crazy like that. Um, and seeing the stands packed, the beer gardens packed, um, everyone standing in the pits, pretty much finding any open window to watch the drifting is like super awesome. So when I'm not running and I'm waiting, for my time, like seeing all the people cheering and being able to hear the crowd, and they can, the crowd can react to like what Jared's saying, and they can do their games and like have a good time, and it creates a way better atmosphere for the event for me as a driver and for our team, and it makes it feel worthwhile that we're at the event for a reason, and putting on a show is ultimately why we're there, and to have fun. And um, what's the point of it if you can't enjoy it with a bunch of people? So we're all out there having fun, spending money, getting reckless. So might as well share it with everyone that we can.
How has it been with this new car, right? First off, the car looks amazing. Like the car is super
Thanks.
clean.
Not after this round.
Well, yeah, all right. But the car in its nature, especially after the build, and for people that want to see more on Travis's car, head over to our YouTube channel if you're listening on iTunes or whatever. But if you go over to YouTube channel, we have a video where we did a Car-natomy about it, and we basically went through the entire platform. Travis took us through the build of the car.
Quite literally from nuts to bolts.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
But so you had so much seat time into your last platform. You had your Old Red. You had so much seat time. I mean, that was the car you essentially started Pro-Am with and had built and continued to develop and progress all the way basically through last year.
Yeah, it was definitely super weird feeling to kind of scrap a chassis that I've been driving for the last 10 years, and that I learned pretty much everything everything I have now in. And I just knew that like I found the limit of that car, and even though it was like a big deal, and it's a big part of me and my program and the family and everything like that, I knew it was time to change, because I found the absolute mechanical limit of that thing and how I could drive it. So going to this car, I had a feeling it would be a lot better and more responsive and a little faster, better drivability. Like I had an idea because I had driven one for a practice car for the last 2 years. I kind of worked my way into it. So I have an E36 M3 that I've been driving at a ton of events in the off season in between rounds. And I loved how that car drove. So I had an idea. I just didn't know it would be this good with 1,000 horsepower, and like as soon as we went and got to Atlanta and started practicing with this thing, and starting to like kind of dial some stuff in, like it was an amazing feeling because it's the best car I've ever driven, hands down, in my drifting career. So, and we have scratched the surface with its potential. We've gotten to the point where we need to put more power in it because we can overhook the car for how much power we have, and we need to be able to go another level with that. So that's our next plan. But yeah, the car's amazing. I had no idea it would be this good. I knew it was going to be good, but I didn't know it was going to be this good. And I just can't wait to see how quickly we can develop the rest of the car and hopefully get some carbon here pretty soon.
Listen, I think first off, we're man, it's like every time we have one of these conversations, I'm left with more questions at one point than I want to know. But like, so cool, because one of the things you just said before we even get into the placements, the new car, power adding, one of the things you just said has me like, because as a guy that doesn't drift,
Yeah.
there are so many people, Odie and all these other people that have, used S chassis to run the series to a very high competitive level before. So, what is it about your S chassis? When do you get to that point? What is it particularly that says this is the end of the road for me in an S chassis? I know that you like the BMW stuff, and I know that you've been missiling with it and stuff like that. So there is a lot of, like, you knew it was going to be a better platform for what you wanted to do. But when do you get to that point where you say, hey, look, this S chassis, and what is it that S chassis limited you with? Like, why can some people use it to different levels than others?
So the thing with my S chassis being the last S13 left in Formula D, the S13 versus an S14 and S15 is actually a lot different. The suspension geometry is different. The wheelbase is even shorter. They just are very small and twitchy, and I mean S14s are still a little twitchy because they're not much longer, but a little bit longer and a little more stable, and have a better rear end geometry out of the gate. And I just got to the point where like I wanted to drive the car a lot faster and get it all wound up a lot more, and just have the next level of car. And I felt like all of the mistakes I was making last year in the car wasn't due to me being a bad driver or having to learn more. It was due to the car limiting me and how I wanted to drive it. And once that switch kind of flipped in my head, I was like, yeah, it's time, because there's a reason why I was the last standing S13 in the series. And I did everything. I had a ton of R&D into that thing and trying to make it work. And we had probably the fastest S13 that's ever been in Formula D, honestly. It was just a very big handful to drive and very hard to be consistent in it, and hard to just have a little bit more. We were always at the limit with that thing, and it either worked well for us or it bit us in the ass. So we had no room in the middle, and this BMW has all that. So,
well, no, I was just gonna say. I mean, I don't know about you, Scott, but I mean, I've been watching a few of the FD rounds, and I can see how differently he drives with this new car.
Oh, it's so much smoother.
Like, it's night and day. It's insane.
Yeah,
this thing it's so much easier to handle, and I can get the thing wound up, and even at 20% more of what the S13 ever was for speed and grip, even at 20% more in the BMW, it drives 100% easier. And that car really is like cruise control for me when we have it in like the mid-range setting. This weekend in Seattle, and that's just like some technical side note, like that's due to the suspension geometry in the BMW and the extra wheelbase. It's almost 10 inches longer hub to hub than the 240 was. And just the way the steering is, McPherson strut front rack instead of McPherson strut rear rack. So there's some benefits to that. And then there's benefits to the trailing arm, and the car reacts to side bite versus forward drive, and just everything's better. But yeah, getting into the BMW, it's just like, it's crazy to me because I'm just so much more comfortable in a car that's so much faster. And this weekend at Seattle, we finally found the limit of horsepower to grip in the car, and it was like pretty insane to feel because the car had so much speed and so much grip in it in the 8, and it's the most we've ever like turned it up to. And it got to the point where like 830 foot-pounds of torque was not enough to light the tires off anymore. It had so much mechanical grip that the thing was just like trying to lift tires and trying to understeer me into the wall, and like everything I could do to keep it on the track. And you can see it in the battle, like me struggling. And I'm glad we put it all in and turned the car up to find that limit, because now we know we just need a little more power, and we can push the car even farther. But yeah, it's a crazy feeling because going that fast in the car and having it that wound up, it was still easier to control than the S13 ever was, right, even at that level. So I'm super, super happy with it.
How much power does the car make right now?
It does. It's like 1,000 crank horsepower setup. So it's like 810 at the tire and 830 foot-pounds at the tire. It's all nitrous, just big cube V8 nitrous, and the thing makes more torque quicker than my Cummins. It's like 830 foot-pounds of torque at 3,700 RPM. So it just hits like a freight train, and then it doesn't fall off. It's still making 750 foot-pounds at 6,800 all the way at the top. So,
Jesus, man.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this before, and I don't want to get too much into the details because I kind of feel like there's a curtain that maybe shouldn't necessarily be exposed. But so you're trying to get more power out of things with obviously different power adders, nitrous, whatever it may be. You talked about how you found that power limit to, power to grip limit, and you're looking to push past it. So how much more power are we looking to build that we think is necessary to really take this platform to that next notch?
I mean, I think I'm going to try to put another like 150 into it.
Okay.
And even at that, I feel like we could still over grip the car to where it's not enough.
So you can
but we're going to
essentially
start
put
with
more
that.
power.
Oh yeah. Like with this chassis, I'm confident that if we had 1,400 wheel horsepower, we could still make the car so hooked up that it didn't want to spin the tires.
Man, that's crazy. But so knowing that you have, all right, so this is a completely hard question to ask, and I say this from somebody that's tuned cars and built cars, not to the level of Travis is, but the reason I'm saying this is, could you ever think that maybe using turbo or forced induction as a way of not only adding power, but being able to have some additional, more complex control over that power, would that ever be an option, or a completely different car for you?
So you kind of answered it a little bit for me. The turbo or supercharger thing, I think the only thing I would do if I was kind of forced into it would be a like centrifugal blower, like a Vortec, similar to like Odie or Matt Field setup. Just because of simplicity, because a turbo setup's really complicated, has a ton of weight, and adds a lot of heat. So I would never build a turbo V8 for any of my competition cars. So I kind of like write that off out the door. Like if you ever look at Dye's car, the thing works really well, and has like a very great power band and drivability aspect to it. But like I look in the engine bay of that thing and I'm like, I kind of like more open, like easier to access. There's a lot crammed in there. They've got it figured out. It's just like not for me. I like to be able to like basically reach my hands around the engine block and hug it if I want to, to be able to like get to it all. Um, so I wouldn't build a turbo one. I would do a Vortec, just simply because like no extra like oil lines or plumbing. All I'd have to do is put an intercooler up front, and plumb it, do a different like crank pulley setup, and run a belt, and it's self-contained for the oiling system. So I would do that. But on the other hand, it is more weight also over the nose. And there's money involved with that and having spare parts. So for me, just pumping it full of more nitrous, as long as the motor's built for it, it's like I already have a fill station and mother bottles in the rig. So what's an extra couple pounds a lap if we got to just add more power to it? It's pretty easy to just turn it up that way. And I like the simplicity of it and the weight savings.
It's interesting because what you did there, and I know that it happened quickly in that conversation, but what you did there was you kind of expressed to people there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. There's a lot of ways to get more power or change the power band or put power in certain places. But what you expressed there was all the reasons and the thought process behind your build and why you may not do certain things, really, which comes down to reducing complexity, improving reliability, and making sure that you can continue to maintain and work on the car, with you and your team quickly.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And we're just able to save, time and money by keeping the car just easy to work on, and just like if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of mentality for us. I'd like to test one of those blowers eventually. I think it'd be cool because it would fill in the gap in the power band up top where we can't spray the nitrous because it's too close to the limiter.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if we put a blower on the car on this motor with these heads, like it'd be hard not to make 1200 horsepower. Like it would be hard to make any less than that. Just the way that my engines are built and how much compression we run and all of that. So I'd have to have my motors completely reworked and changed just to put the blower on it. And so, I mean, right now it works great. Like the two cars that were 1 and 2 in the championship last year have big inch high compression, nitrous fed V8s. So, I mean, obviously that works, however you want to do it. And then the cars that won the championship 3 years in a row prior to them were turbo, JZs. So there's multiple ways to skin a cat. I just like when I feel like picks their path in the beginning and kind of sticks with it. Some people deviate when they build different cars; they'll change shouts. So for the most part, like you can pick any one of these platforms and make it work all the way to the top. You guys got to find the winning combination is all. And this one working pretty damn well for me so far. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Well, it's funny because hearing all this, I can't help but remember when Alex Heilbrunn was competing. I don't know if you remember his car, but it was extremely. I don't know the specifics in terms of the mechanical. I'm a little less knowledgeable on that front, but from what I remember, it was an LS. It was a V8 with supercharger and the rear mounted radiator and all that stuff. And I mean it reminds me a lot of him, and I wonder if and how that could potentially be incorporated into what you're doing. It sounds like that's not really the path you're heading on for weight reasons, for complexity and all that stuff, but I just can't help but keep thinking of that car and how much power he put down with that.
Yeah, that thing was making a good 1,000 foot-pounds of torque at 3,500 RPM with that setup. Like that was a pretty big tall deck motor with a large blower on it, root style. So that's Novak's car now actually.
Yep.
In Prospect. So I think they detuned it quite a bit and brought it down so that they don't just run out of tire immediately. But that car obviously worked really well. It's just once again there's a lot of stuff in that engine bay and a lot of extra weight over the front tires and a lot of extra heat in that area that I don't feel like the extra horsepower gained is worth sacrificing all that for my car. but yeah, it still works. It's another way to skin the cat. Maybe they dropped the weight somewhere else somehow. But yeah, a million different ways to do it, and drifting with 1,000 horsepower in the end is always a good time, no matter what the car is.
Yeah, not bad. I wanna talk about your place in the standings right now, but before I do, Brian had one of the our watchers here, our viewers.
Well,
has,
8-bit Brian is the whatchamacallit, the AV guy for Maximum Driftcast. He's the
Yep.
one that does
Okay.
all the
Yeah, so Travis, he's coming in with a couple questions. I think some of these kind of have been touched on, but let's let the expert answer. He's basically saying, do you feel that an S13 still has a competitive lifetime in pro spec, especially with their new rules?
Yeah, I think any car, like you limit Pro One's so gnarly nowadays that a lot of it's just the speed and grip is so wild in our class that Pro Spec and how Pro 2 was, like, get these guys limited on a 255, and I feel like any car can be competitive on a 255 with the right R&D. Some cars have their advantages in my mind, but an S chassis I feel like is definitely still competitive up to that level. My S13 Pro 2 spec, I feel like if I was able to prep it and like rent it to a Pro 2 guy that like knew their way around a drift car, I feel like they could definitely like do some damage in that thing. Yeah, I don't think that chassis is necessarily dead for competition. I feel like an S13 would be great for pro spec. Just I my opinion was I found its mechanical limit when I stepped into Pro 1 and everything got elevated to the next level. So,
Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard because, pro spec really, with the rule change, they really brought some interesting things back. Things like, the non-telescopic steering wheels and, right? It was non-telescopic steering wheels. They also did the radiator mount, couldn't do the trunk radiator mount, right? All those things.
yeah, so Kevin, so the only one that's in effect right now, I believe, is the sequential transmission rule.
Okay.
And it might not even be in effect today, honestly. I think that might be a next year thing. But it was every car's going to be on Link engine management, and that's not to like line Link's pockets or anything. That's just to create like more even like spec playing field.
Very
The Link
NASCAR.
stuff is like, yeah, and the Link stuff is very good bang for your buck. Excellent. Like obviously they're my title this year, so shameless plug here. But like I've been using the Link stuff forever, and it's pretty wild what those computers can do for like a fraction of the cost of what like you would
Some
pay
of the
to like get a
standalones are.
Motec.
Yeah.
Yeah, some stuff like Motec and everything. So they're amazing. I love the Link stuff. So getting all the cars in Pro Spec on a Link, I feel like is a good idea. Plus Kevin can read the data and keep everyone, centered on the even playing field. But on top of that, it was Kevin didn't want radiators in the trunk. He didn't want pedal boxes, and he didn't want an aftermarket steering column, and no sequential transmissions. I agree with the sequential transmission part. I feel like a sequential transmission isn't necessarily mandatory in competitive drifting. I feel like it's just a personal preference. And on top of that, to get a reliable sequential transmission to hold up all year at 800 horsepower, it's going to cost you like 15 to 20 grand to get one put in the car. And that's much better spent on spare parts, in my opinion. Just get an H pattern dog box, like get a GSR, and just make sure it's fresh every year. You won't have any issues. And just literally, like, you could buy 2 dog boxes, 2 quick changes for the price of a Hollinger sequential. So like, it's a no-brainer for me. So I agree with that one. The steering column and pedal box rule, I don't necessarily agree with those 100%. I've seen some pretty sketchy steering columns in some old cars with like 0 collapse in them. All these race columns that we buy, like they all have collapse built in. It's like a very important aspect of it. And on top of that, like I have literally broken the clutch pedal in half on my E36 before, and that's the last thing I want to have happen in competition. So like I would just rip them out and put a pedal box in. So I don't necessarily agree with that one unless someone can come out with like a steel replacement clutch pedal, or Kevin makes a um, exception for some of those cars that have like factory issues. But I know it's all to like save cost and make more of a spec series. I like the direction it's going, but we'll see how everything works out with those rules that Kevin puts in. I agree with the computer rule. I agree with the transmission rule. I don't know about the steering column and pedal box stuff, and it doesn't really cost you that much to put the radiator in the trunk. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
The steering wheel column borderlines to me on safety, and as far as the pedal box goes, I don't really think we're talking about it's not the transmission comparison. So I don't know that there's so much cost difference there that I really understand it, but I've read a lot of things that Ryan Sage has said, and he's seemed to allude to the fact that, like, bear with us, give us time. It's all gonna make sense at some point. I get where they're going with the series. Like, I get what they're trying to do, and I think it's great because you're not making a feeder series. You're making another spec series that exists side by side with different variables, and I think that's necessary. I also think that there's some other things that are necessary, like maybe increasing one more round for Pro Spec. I also think maybe putting things in a way where the live stream is better for Pro Spec. But I get where they're going. I get it.
Yep, and they opened it up to where any pro driver is eligible to drop down into Pro Spec. Like I could build a Pro Spec car and go compete in Pro Spec. So it's open to everyone like that too. Like if I did that, I just build a 500 wheel horse 36, and just like go out and drive and have a very, very simple, super cheap, reliable drift car. And like it'd be fun to go do another series. If I had room in the rig, I would totally bring another car to do it. So that's where they're going. They want some of the pro guys to come in with spec cars for like a budget friendly series, and maybe some extra seat time weekend, and maybe try to convince some of the more like out of country drivers, some more foreign drivers, to be able to come into FD for a little bit less of a cost as well, and having to do 4 rounds with a cheaper car that they might be able to rent from one of the pro guys. So I think it's going in the right direction, and I'm excited to see how it ends up. But I don't know. I'd love to build a car and do that also. So we'll see.
I feel like you just threw a very under the radar challenge. You basically said, and just, stay with me here. You basically just said, I'm going to put together a 500 horsepower BMW, and I'm going to drop down. I'm going to come back to Pro Spec, and I'm going to wipe the floor with all you people. That's what you said, right?
No, not at all. I just need to like.
I felt like we had an exclusive breaking news thing here, Travis.
No, it's a lot of extra money for me to operate something like that. But I mean, I'm not opposed to it. And like, you get more, definitely like bringing a car down, level the playing field, like a car that's within spec with others. Definitely, like, I feel like doesn't give like any competitive advantage to anyone. But also, like, there's guys in Pro Spec right now that like rip super, super hard. And I feel like there's a few guys, you put them in a pro car and they could like do some damage in our series as well. So why not like step foot in each side and like, I don't know, have some fun, get some more seat time. If I go down to if I bring in a car and go down to Pro Spec to run their events also with ours, and like, who knows, some kid might come in and just like wipe the floor with me one of these days. Like, right. You never know. Like, they're getting good, and I just want to keep driving and drive more, and I don't know, whatever I got to do that, I'm down with.
So do you feel that if that opportunity would arise, that you could go and let's say that let's take the variables off the table. Let's say the car is already built, so you have another car. Let's say you have a rig that you could transport it in. So we're taking away all the things of that, and
Hmm.
let's even say that the extra cost of all the events and stuff that's been paid for you. So now it just comes down to the actual running of two series with two different cars. Do you
Yep.
feel that having uh, made it up to pro, that running pro spec could potentially be more frustrating than you remember because there is a consistency difference in the driving that you see in that series? Do you think it could present things that you've come to trust other drivers, especially when you're in a chase position in pro? Like, you know what they're going to do, you trust them a little bit more.
I mean, yeah, that was always hard. Even when I drove in Pro 2, my level of consistency even wasn't up to par as I guess is on the same level I am now. I feel like, and there's other drivers as well because like Pro 2 used to just be, it's like Pro Am Nationals. It's all the best Pro Am drivers.
Yep.
They come together and compete together and on a different level. But um, I don't know. I feel like it'd still be good, really good practice, even if I drove with someone that was like inexperienced. It's kind of like dodging wrenches.
Yeah.
I do it all the time at local tracks. I'll like jump in with random trains, and I know it's not the best thing to do for like when you're learning, but for me, like one of the most fun things I do is like I'll like be in my E36 and there'll be a bunch of guys that are in a train of like five or six, and I'll just jump in the middle of them, kind of like unannounced, and I'll just like roll with it. And if they jam, they jam, and if they're making mistakes, then I got to get around them clean somehow, and it just helps with like it um, helps with my reaction and just like staying fresh with that. So, yeah, there could be a little bit of frustration there, but then again, like it is what it is, and everyone's there to learn and drive more. And if we get more pro guys to come down to pro spec, um, the whole field could change. And then on top of that, like some of the pro spec guys might be a little frustrated with the pro drivers coming down, but it's not. You can't really call it like coming down.
Right.
Um, it's
Coming
more of just
over.
like going over, yeah, to another series, and that's what they're trying to do with this prospect stuff, with Link. And um, if I was a prospect guy and had pro drivers come over to the series, I would just be pumped because I would try to drive with them in practice every time I had the opportunity. I would try to get battles with them as much as I could because you only are as good as the people you drive with.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the thing with me. Like, I've had my fair share of tough top 32 battles and tough top 16 battles and gotten knocked out early on like plenty of occasion to the guys that have won the event. And I would much rather go out to the guy that wins the event early in the day and gain that experience than like get a nice easy pass to the 8 or the 4, because I know in the long run it'll help me. And I just look at it differently, I guess. So I would hope that some of the pro spec guys would look at it the same way.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Let's see. I want to make sure I get to
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
questions here. So 8-Bit Brian also asks, do you feel that the E46 is still a better choice of comp car even in drift spec
Um,
in comparison to the S13?
do you think, like, do I think my E46 is better than my S13? Is that what you're saying?
I
Or,
think that's what he's asking. I think he's talking about the platform in general. Like, is an
oh,
E46 just in general a better platform in drifting than an S13?
yeah, all around, top to bottom,
Yeah.
every aspect of it. And even in any other form of racing as well. Like guys have E36 and E46 road race cars, drag cars, stage rally cars, drift cars. Um, there's a reason why they're in so many different racing series. There's Spec E46. Um, they're just overall like a very good race. I call them the best worst cars ever made because I'd never have one as a daily driver. Um, I'd never just like drive an E46 around all day because I know I just like hate myself because I'd be fixing a bunch of shit. Like, and but as a race car, I feel like they're absolutely amazing cars, and they can pretty much do any discipline. S13, I feel like, is limited in a lot of ways for that stuff at a competitive level, at least.
Yeah. Well, the best part about your E46 is what you did was you took everything that was complicated in German engineering about it. You just took it out and threw it in the garbage. So, you know, you fixed that problem like day one.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I got a wrecked M3 shell and just stripped it, cut off the stuff that was broken and I didn't need, and then just added all my drift specific parts from the S13 and made it basically like old red number 2, and just with better suspension and just overall better car.
So Brian also asked another question that I think is interesting, because he basically said, have you ever experienced any issues when you're chasing a car that has lower power than you? And I think that that's an interesting point. I think back to the championship, 3-4 years ago when Chris Forsberg, was he last won? Yeah, when Chris Forsberg last won, he was in a situation where his car was only making about 650 horsepower.
The Z?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When his Z.
Was it? I'm just trying to remember. Was it the VQ?
Powered.
Oh, it was the VQ.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So he was only making like 650, and I forget who he's battling. I forget who he was going against at the time. But they had way more power. Does that mess with you when you're trying to chase somebody, or not really?
Yeah, I've dealt with that every round this year because the E46 is so fast, and I've got it all turned up because I want to drive it fast, and I've definitely burned myself a couple times by having the car too hooked up for the car I'm battling, where I end up making a mistake and taking myself out because the so much more speed than the car in front of me, and at that point you can't drive the car smooth behind the other car. So it's very much a strategic game to try and dial in your car to match or just slightly exceed the speed of the car you're battling. And I feel like that's the ideal setup, and that's what we're trying to figure out in this thing. So pretty much every round up until Seattle, I've had a car that was probably too fast for the car I was battling every single time. Yeah. So it was a handful to make work. But here at Seattle, I feel like we had the car very well matched for the people we were driving with, and that was like a huge step in our program to find that balance. So the team's like really stoked on that aspect of it.
Man, I'm going to jump around for a second in the order of these questions, but Nicholas asked a question I think is interesting, because you're buddies with Chelsea, right? So
yeah.
So if anybody has, it might be you. I think the answer is no, but he says, do you think you'd have fun driving one of the Mustangs in FD? Have you driven any of them? So, like, have you secretly driven Chelsea's RTR?
I have not. I've been trying to organize that. I want to drive one of those things super bad. I think I would definitely have a lot of fun driving those cars. I've always been curious on how they drive because I always like study Chelsea's driving. I feel like Chelsea's the best driver in the series right now.
Yeah.
And has been for a few years. And I always aspire to be able to drive like that dude. And I really want to know what that car feels like and what it takes to drive it, how he drives it.
Yeah.
But I have driven quite a few Mustangs. I've driven a couple RTRs that were like the street spec ones or the like demo spec ones. Yeah. And they drive pretty good. They're definitely bigger, and the suspension's a lot different than my BMW and my S chassis. But overall, like I don't dislike the cars by any means, and I'm sure their comp cars are like night and day difference from the demo cars that I've driven. So I don't know. Maybe one day, maybe I'll go jam one of those things around, or I'll take someone's seat in the future. Who knows?
Man, it's interesting because I think those Mustangs are when you watch them, they drive very uncharacteristic than all the other cars that are there, right? And like you can
Yep.
see that whether the way they three wheel, the way that they kind of, I almost feel like they have their a whole different way of piloting them. And Chelsea is one of the most exciting. First off, I think we can say without a doubt he's got to be one of the most exciting or most skilled and exciting to watch.
Oh yeah.
Chase drivers that's in the series. Period.
Yep. Absolutely. I agree.
It's like watching
He's
Chelsea
scary.
when he's on
He's
is
scary.
like watching a master class in, like, it makes me, you know how like when you sometimes listen to music and it makes you just want to rage because it's like so whatever. Like sometimes I watch Chelsea and I just want to like take my car out and like slam the freaking thing into a tree. Like
Yeah, the dude is an absolute madman and has no regard for any sort of like self-safety or life preservation in any form, which is like what makes him so good at what he does.
Yeah.
I'm kind of trying to adopt the mentality a little bit, but it's like, I don't know, we're all out here like literally seconds away from like crashing at all times, and it takes a certain level of crazy to want to do what we do all the time. It's just that dude's definitely on a different level of holy shit, how did he even pull that off? So yeah, the cars definitely like react very different, and the way he's able to maneuver those cars with how big they are and how much power and grip they have and how the team has them set up is like, it's pretty cool to watch. And I enjoy driving with those cars every chance that I can get. Like I did 2 back-to-back like practice battles. We changed the practice format in FD for top 32 practice at this last round, and we basically like we would pick a partner and we'd go back to back in practice to kind of simulate a battle. And I did that with Chelsea, and then I did it with Vaughn immediately afterwards. So I basically drove with both those guys in practice simulating a battle, and it was like, I actually learned a lot from those 2 battles, and we made a lot of changes in the car that helped because of what we found driving with those guys. So it was super cool. Every time I drive with Chelsea, we always run into each other. It seems like I got into outer zone 4 wall in our practice run and like pretty much just wiped the whole left rear corner off the car. And as I went into the wall, he got into the wall too and tapped me, and it was just like a mess, and we just both stayed pinned and drove out of it. So it was cool. That usually always happens. We do that in our practice cars at park too regularly. But yeah, it's good. Those cars definitely like are set up well, and they know how to wheel them around. That's for sure.
Well, I think the extra crazy thing when it comes to Chelsea, just to throw a comment in there, is the whole idea that like he was driving pretty insanely when he was piloting the E46.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, when I first heard that he was going into the Mustang with Vaughn, I was like, man, is he really going to be able to drive that car as crazy as the E46? And it's almost like, in my humble opinion, it's almost like he sort of brought out the crazy in Vaughn's driving style with the Mustang.
Yeah, they learn a lot from each other and feed off each other very well, and work well, and they bounce setup ideas off of each other. And even Vaughn's car to Chelsea's car, I've heard, is like quite different. But I've definitely noticed like Vaughn's driving elevate as Chelsea's driving elevated. They kind of like feed off each other. It's a good team and a good matchup. But like, yeah, they also have like an absolutely insane team that like gives them anything they ever need to win. So that's really awesome.
So talking about the Link thing, you said it before with Kevin. He pulls logs after every run.
Yeah, he has a data logger in everyone's cars. All the Pro 1 guys. We're required to have a plug to hook up his little device. He like sticks to the roll cage. and he can monitor throttle position, RPM. He can monitor
Probably like a
like
timestamp.
yeah, if you have GPS, he can monitor like. Oh, I think the module has GPS, so he can track vehicle speed, G-force, like roll, pitch, yaw, everything like
Yeah, like
that.
telemetry and
He can
stuff.
sense if yeah, all the telemetry. He has all of that. So um, he's just kind of like keeping an eye on everyone's stuff to kind of see what everyone's doing and how everyone's driving, and he also uses that data to help uh, create a better track with the judges. If they have a decel zone in a weird spot, um, and the drivers complain about it, Kevin can back us up and be like, "Yeah, I pulled logs. 75% of drivers are decelling outside of this zone. Is more natural, so we need to move the zone." Um, so like he's using it in that aspect. He's also using it to figure out if there's a way where he can track it, and if there's a controversial call when there's contact, Kevin can be like, "Oh yeah, like he decelled at a very fast rate where he wasn't supposed to, and that could have caused a collision. And like maybe we can use that data to relay for better judging and a more fair competition in that aspect." So he's working on a lot of different things with that. As of right now, it's just I think he's just using it for track configuration and to just like get a general idea of how everyone drives and what these cars do.
So you really could see the use of that in judging when they could essentially plug in to each car and then have a uh, live data feed kind of going right back to the judges to watch it.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be killer if they had all of our live data just on a screen above them while they were judging. They could quickly make a decision based on like accurate GPS data and what the cars do. And in-car video would be cool too. And like, there's a lot we can do. It's just have to figure out how to make it work efficiently and make it cost effective and all the above other things that I don't care to think about. But um, out of my pay grade. I just want to go racing, but anything they do to better the sport is okay with me.
Right. So let's get back to a couple questions here. Let's say it says, do you think that? Oh, okay. So some of the up and coming guys, like for pro spec,
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that the BMW is like some of the BMW drivers, like the Nick Novaks and stuff? Do you think that they have an advantage, I guess, piloting an E46 in pro spec and then trying to make the jump into pro?
I mean, I think the cars, any like trailing arm BMW is extremely capable. It all comes down to driving style as well. Um, but I feel like the cars are very, even still to this day, are a very well kept secret. But I don't know. It comes down to driving style and like driver preference. Guys that really mesh with these cars seem to do very well, like Brutski and Novak and let's see, even like the Sorensen's cars are still trailing arm BMWs, even though they have like the newer body kits on them.
Yeah.
Um, and they're that way for a reason. But yeah, I mean, I feel like any car, if you can get comfortable and do well in pro spec, I feel like the best thing to do is jump into pro with a car you're comfortable with and have some data from. I wouldn't ever recommend switching chassis going from pro spec to pro one because you're not going to have a good time. There's a lot to like learn and a lot of setup required that you need. I feel like everyone needs to be prepared for when they step into pro one and make the move over. Um, but yeah, I mean, I feel like yeah, any car that a driver is very comfortable with and doing well in, I feel like just that driver in general has the advantage moving over to pro.
It's been interesting watching people like Brandon Sorensen um, enter into the sport. One, because the age going
I'm
younger.
laughing. He's
You know
only
what I mean?
16, right?
Well, he just turned 17.
Crazy.
But watching, I think that there's a whole level of driver that could potentially be coming up into these series where it's going to trend age-wise downward as long as they can figure the funding thing out. But
Yep.
I guess that kind of all stems, well, not all, but a lot of the stuff stems from the ability to get so much seat time in on simulators.
Yeah, yes and no. I've learned a lot driving my sim, and I do feel like it is good for certain aspects of your driving, like just staying fresh and reaction times and all that, and really judging everything that's happening off of just pure vision because you can't feel the G-force and you can't feel the load of the car.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Did we lose
If
him?
you're
Oh,
really,
there we go.
can you hear me still?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good.
Sorry, you skipped.
Okay. No, you're good. I feel like nothing beats like real vehicle seat time.
Right.
But definitely like in the off time, a simulator is worth its weight in gold to just stay quick and stay fresh. And even just like trying to figure out the layout of a track, like my spotter Scotty had the Jersey, the Gambler track made a month before we went there.
Yeah.
And we all drove it like privately on the sim. And when I showed up there, I felt like I had already driven the car there for the most part, other than just like figuring out like gear ratio and vehicle speed. And like I already knew the layout and the line needed to where it like really helped me and saved me a lot of time and setup and saved the team a lot of time and setup if I hadn't have done that. So it's definitely worth it. But on the other hand, like I feel like if you start drifting on a simulator and get good on a sim and then jump into a real car and expect to like go wreck house, I feel like that's not a good not a good way to go about it either, because there are a lot of things you can only learn in a real car.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that, but I think we've seen more and more, especially in some of the pro-am and beginning competitive stages of drifting, we're seeing more and more people come out with really not having much experience in drifting and immediately come out being able to link the course and even be fairly aggressive and competitive with other people that maybe don't even have that.
Yeah, there's definitely some instances that could happen for sure. I'm not discounting those people by any means,
Sure.
but there are some people that just have like a raw natural talent that they can switch back and forth between the virtual and the real world of driving. And that's super awesome if you have that. Some people like just need the real life experience to feel things. It's all about how you learn. But either way, I feel like still simulators, I feel like any pro driver, pro spec driver, pro am driver even would all benefit greatly from having a properly set up sim, no matter what.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think for a guy like me, like a simulator would be good for awareness and repetition and kind of whatever. But I feel like without having that actual physical seat time to kind of because it's not about peripheral vision. It's not about depth of field. It really at that point becomes down to instinct, muscle memory, and that stuff isn't necessarily learned without kind of being in the car for me,
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's also times where like I've created bad habits for myself on the sim that I've had to knock out my driving in real life. And I've also created good habits on the simulator that have helped me drive in real life, like practicing like literally firing it into corners without lifting and then without touching the handbrake and seeing how to manage the car that way. And that muscle memory helped me at Seattle this weekend actually, because I was carrying the fastest speeds into the bank that I ever have on initiation, and a lot of the time like not having to touch the handbrake very much because I'm able to just clutch kick in and just like set the car in the line at full speed without being scared of it and knowing what it's going to do. So that's helped. But on the other hand, I have caught myself doing things that are not the best to do in a real car just because of the details that a sim provides, and how I have to compensate in the game versus like it not translating in real life. So you have to like make quick changes and make sure you're not kind of overdoing it.
Yeah.
But,
So, as we wind down here, you finished 19th last year. This year, you're currently positioned 7th
Yeah.
in the standings. It's super interesting, and we were talking about this for a few minutes earlier. Every year, I feel like there's this group that's right below the group of people that people are talking about for being the contenders for the championship.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like these people don't get enough mention because they could be the series disruptors. And you're right in that bubble, which is sick because, you know, just a couple of things that happen for you and a couple of things that don't happen for them and some placing, and all of a sudden you really could see the top 10 shift super quick.
Yep. I mean, seventh through 10th in points is separated by 4 points, right?
Right. That's crazy.
So
That's nuts.
it's very close. Yeah. And then I'm still 120 something points behind Chelsea in first.
Yeah, I understand. But that's
So the difference between first through sixth and 7th through 10th and even 7th through 12th is like insane. So yeah, there's definitely like a big differential there.
But arguably, that seems to be how it works out most years. You know what I mean? There always seems...
Yep.
You usually see by, like, midway, one driver pulling away from the pack in points. And then, you know, sometimes you get the James Dean where, like, he almost didn't have to... A couple years, he didn't even have to show up almost to the last event to be able to win the championship.
Yeah,
that's right.
Peter just won. Won their series championship that way. He had this championship locked up at round 4, and like didn't even have to show up to round 5 to win it.
Yeah,
Wait, yeah. Didn't James Dean just have to do like a buy run or something like that, and then he won? I forget what the scenario was, but it was something ridiculous.
He had to finish in the top 16, I think, right?
No, there was one where all he had to do was spin a tire in
That's
qualifying.
what I'm talking about.
He just needed a few qualifying points, and that was all that was.
That's so nuts.
But, so as soon as he passed the line in the 32 and got his 32 points, it was sealed.
Which is crazy, but it's super anticlimactic.
Yeah, yeah, of course. You want to see the battle to the end. That's always exciting, but you know the script isn't always written that way.
Yeah. Well, we've seen that. I don't.
The Formula Drift script.
Yeah, we've seen that.
Are there any other questions worth?
Let's see. Last question. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand.
I don't understand the last question. First off, somebody thinks you're the next Michael Schumacher, which I think is pretty cool.
That sounds pretty sweet.
In the other words, I don't know.
My last question. Thanks again.
Awesome answers the awesome stream questions. Anyhow, well, Nicholas,
how well would you
what?
Do, it says how well would you
do an
at
F1? They're not completely the same, but
well,
Travis,
I think
still totally drive F1.
F1?
I would totally drive F1. I'd probably get my ass handed to me, but I like keep up with F1 all the time, and I love it, and I think it's absolutely insane. And I don't know. I've always wanted to drive an F1 car. Honestly, lately, like I've been doing more F1 driving on my sim than I have drifting.
It's crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I like I'll run F1 in VR. Like I have all the updated like new like
tracks.
2020 and 2021 F1 cars and all the tracks. Yeah, and they're all laser scanned and pretty much perfect. And I just sit there and I try to beat all of the real life drivers' qualifying times in the sim, and it's really, really hard.
I know I have never been to an F1 race in person, but I did attend an Indy race. And I will say that I positioned myself, or where I was at a turn where the car was coming toward me. And so they're
braking. See the G-load of it pull away. Yeah.
They're braking toward me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So they're coming toward, and when I tell you that you've never seen anything like this, until you see this in person, you can't You can't fathom. These cars are going 1,000,000 miles an hour, and at no point, like, it looks like they're just gonna crash into you. There's no way they could scrub speed, and at no point, without even a struggle, bah, 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 they turn the corner and they're gone. Like,
Yep. When you make like 15,000 pounds of downforce,
yeah,
you know,
that does it.
at 100 miles an hour, and the crazy like, yeah, we had IndyCar come to Portland in 2019, and they brought Stadium Super Trucks with them, and that was a pretty wild event, like standing on the front straight and watching Stadium Super Trucks hit jumps like right next to you.
Yeah.
And then watching IndyCar at Portland was like really sick also, because the cars they're all twin turbo V6s, all run pretty much the same power plant, either like Chevy or Honda.
Yeah.
But they're all pretty much the same. But I mean, the cars weigh like 1,300 pounds and make 700 wheel, and are like absolutely bonkers. But like any super legit open wheel racing is like pretty insane, and I would love to get behind the wheel of one. Like, absolutely.
Travis, I think we should make our own Indy type car. We'll take a Miata, we'll cut the whole thing off, and then we'll just put the most obnoxious power plant we could find in this thing.
Yep. We'll just put my spare FD motor in there with a bunch of spray.
That's so
good. It'll
good.
weigh.
Yeah.
The motor will weigh like 400 pounds dressed and make like 1,000 horsepower, and then the car will weigh. And then the car will weigh. You know, we could probably or less. We'll just build them. We'll build an Indy car with way less aero, so it's way sketchier but goes faster.
Yeah, that's pretty much my spec.
Sounds safe.
Oh man,
I'm down. Let's start it. Koenig's funding the project, though.
Well, I don't know how well that's going to work out, but you know,
hey,
we'll try. Could you imagine the proposal on that budget?
Like, hey, yeah, so we're going to do this. It's going to cost a lot of money, and there's really no return in it, but
it's going to be cool.
Super cool. It's going to be super cool.
Oh man, I want to. So, how do you feel about this year, this season? You like going into, because now you got to go all the way back to St. Louis.
Yeah, super lame. But I guess like
sucks.
That's the scheduling conflict they ran into.
Yeah.
Yeah, super lame, but whatever, it is what it is. It's just another, 30 hours each way. I got to drive my freaking rig. But other than that, I feel like this season has gone so much better than I could have ever imagined. And I'm super grateful for how the car turned out and all the help I had with putting it together from all my friends and family, and how awesome my crew is. We made some changes crew-wise and like brought some new people in. And it's just like all those guys have just like been amazing. And it's gotten to the point where like I can just show up and drive, and like I fully can trust my guys to make sure my car's ready to rip. And takes a lot of weight off my shoulders, and I can do my job better and they can do their job better when they don't have to deal with me being an extra cook in the kitchen trying to work on stuff. And because now they're just like, go away, we got this. But yeah, between the team, how the car is, how everything's turned out, how we've been able to finish these last 5 rounds, and everything we've learned, like it's been like a dream come true season with a new car so far for us. So I'm like forever grateful for that. And I can't wait until we get this car like really, really dialed in and learn everything there is to learn about it, and hopefully work our way up more. So
yeah, I'm super pumped because I think that your progression this year is just go between the car change and, kind of using all the experience you've learned in the past, couple years in FD. It's just really, really, really coming to fruition. So much further than Gramps driving the RV,
Yeah, it's came a long way. Yeah, Graham and Grandpa came to Seattle as their first FD event in like almost a year and a half.
How are they?
They're great. Yeah, Graham's still working me under the table every day. Grandma's still doing the same. They just built a shop and staying busy, and yeah, they're doing good.
That's awesome.
You look at them and you wouldn't even tell. Like, you're like, they ain't ever gonna die, ever.
Well,
I'm going before them.
Right?
Yeah, I'm going before them.
Oh God.
I'm more reckless than they are.
Oh man. Well, hopefully.
But no, they're amazing. They're awesome. They're doing good.
Man, so happy to see how far you've come and how much effort you've put in and how it's starting to really return on you, and cementing your way into kind of being one of the really notable drivers in FD.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It feels kind of wild because I was just thinking about this the other day, I don't know, 5 years or so ago. When did I do Pro Am? 2016. Yeah, 2016. When me and Gramps were just like, hey, should we like do Pro 2? That's kind of the next thing. And we're like, yeah, screw it. Like, why not?
Right.
Show up to Orlando, like entry fees in late. I'm calling Cassidy, like, hey, like I can leave right now. Can I get in there? And she's like, well, you got to find a pit because we don't have any more room. And I'm like, well, I'm on my way anyways. Like, I'm crossing the country,
Right.
And like I never thought I'd be at this position. Like, I don't know. I'm super stoked. It makes me feel really good about it, and like couldn't have done it without all the people that have helped me. So
Yeah, it's fantastic.
thank you guys for your support. I appreciate it.
We're such a small part of it, but it's honestly been a blast kind of getting to know you and hang out with you and kind of watch you go through some pretty interesting situations in drifting. We went, first guy to pilot in the first all electric
Yeah.
drift car.
Well, but wait, don't forget, he's the first FD driver to almost get hit by our Koenig 10.
Yeah. Yep. Almost
Well-
got shish kebabbed by that thing.
Well, our commitment to bringing entertainment value to any event we go to is really next level. And when you bring guys like this, it's really
Yeah,
not that hard,
Yeah. FD should be paying you guys to be there.
Yeah, that's what we were saying the other day too. We were like, look, you guys bring us in, we can launch tents into space like nothing.
Yeah. SpaceX.
I know.
Division.
That's what we do. Listen, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you taking so much time to do this. And for those that don't know, Travis has already done a podcast this year that we recorded completely with no audio.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. It was a really great podcast.
It was. Oh, it was.
And we got done, and literally I turned to Jared. I said, that was probably one of the better ones we've ever done. And then 20 minutes later, he comes in. He's like, now, don't get mad. And I said, what? And he said, well, no, I just want you to tell me that you're not going to be upset because I think we had a little snafu. And I said, what is that? He's like, well, see, I think the audio didn't record. I'm like, what do you mean the audio didn't record? It's a podcast. That's all we set out
It's all
for.
audio.
And he's like, yeah, but it didn't make it. And I was like, well, so what do we use? We had an hour and 12 minutes of Travis and us doing this.
Yep.
There was nothing there. Oh, man. Well,
Yeah, good.
thanks
It
for taking the time to do this
Yeah, again.
And
for
when you
real.
have time, check out your Facebook. I sent you a link to a simulator that I was just looking at in Connecticut.
Okay, will do. I'll
I don't
give
think
you
it's
the
going to cut
yay
the
or nay.
cheese, but yeah, give me the thumbs up or thumbs down. It's got some extras on it.
Okay, sounds
So,
good.
All
I'll
right,
take
man.
a
We'll
look
catch
at
up with you, and good luck in St. Louis.
it. All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate
talk
it.
to you later.
Man.
Have a good one.
So, man, I'll tell you, I there's a lot of relationships that you build along the way in Formula Drift and different driving and sponsorships and stuff.
Right.
And I think that Travis easily has been one of those guys, those people that I've really, really, really enjoyed the opportunity to get to know him, kind of experience some of his family, some of his stories,
Right.
be there for so early on in his professional drifting career. I mean, literally, first year he competed professionally in Pro 2, the second event, we were linked up with Travis. You know what I mean? And
Crazy.
yeah, and so it feels good watching somebody that's as like a literally great dude behind the scenes put so much work in. You know how much work they're putting in, and start to get it back. You know what I mean?
For sure, yeah. And I mean, I think from my point of view, with this podcast and just in general, you know, our conversation kind of reminded me how much importance goes into finding the right combo when it comes to like someone like Chelsea has found all the pieces that he needs to really become, you know, a champion.
I mean, you could also make the argument that he made and developed those pieces for him, but I know what you mean.
For sure.
Same thing, yeah.
I what I'm trying to communicate is that I think Travis is on a similar level. Yeah, on a similar path where it's like, okay, he changed one part of the equation, which is the E46, and now and I think a lot of drivers, aside from just those two, are really starting to do that now, and it's going to make the series a lot more interesting, I think, going forward. You know,
I just think it's interesting in general, watching people. You know, they say that a lot of great things come from epiphany moments. You know, the aha moments, right? And so, if you look at a lot of the conversation that we've had with Travis as we've talked over different events that have transpired, there was he's had a few solid aha moments and basically said, wait a minute, I got to change things up totally to go to the next level. Yeah. And I think it's real easy because of the fact that when you change things up so aggressively to be able to take that next step, it costs so much money, so much time, so much effort. And you have to have the epiphany before it to do all that. So it takes that right type of person to be able to learn from it and then execute it and make a change. And we're seeing what the reward is when you do that successfully. And that's incredibly amazing to watch.
Right.
You know?
And just to add to that, not giving up. Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of drivers will get jaded before they get to this point, and they'll just be like, you know what, screw this, I can't do this anymore. You know?
No, I agree. And before we go, I want to throw a shout out to Nicholas Marlowe. Not only did he give us some really good questions, but you said something really. I didn't read it on the air because on the air.
To the 12 people that are watching.
I didn't read it on the air. We're putting our video guy to sleep over here. But aside from that, I didn't read it on on the podcast because I appreciate it. This wasn't about us. But yeah, listen, we enjoy doing the podcast for people that seriously tune in and listen. And I appreciate the comment because it does mean a lot. We put a lot of time in that we don't necessarily, it's not a money thing. We don't certainly get money back for this,
right.
But it is fun doing it. It's nice to be able to talk to people like Travis and put the stories out there, to live forever. So, all I ask is maybe tell your friends about us and make sure that they watch too. And they don't even have to watch it this time. You can watch it any other time.
Well, and subscribe.
Subscribe,
all that stuff. That would be nice.
Please subscribe. Before we wrap up, don't forget the giveaway. It's going on. All you have to do this month, August 2021, is go buy a shirt on our store. You can
the
get
new one, because I actually looked on our store. We still have proven shirts.
All right. Well,
so it's actually the new.
Right. It's this one with the left, and we'll put some sort of caveat now that we think about it on the website. But basically, just go there. Brian, thank you for coming in to ask questions too. We super appreciate it.
As someone who does his own podcast,
which is
That's
great.
Dope.
Which is great. I love the fact that we can do cool things as car people. And, we've had Paco on, so it's not like this isn't and that's the thing. Like this is all just having cool conversations with car people. Maybe one day we'll get Sam on too, just because I think he's a bunch of fun to talk to.
For sure.
But with that said, I think that. Back to the giveaway.
Right, back to the
we got thrown off. We got thrown off.
So many compliments today. We got thrown off.
Yeah, right. We're so focused on ourselves here. Go cop one of these shirts at store.konigwheels.com. Grab this shirt, the one with the Koenig on the chest here, and this month we're gonna pick one person. At the end of the month.
It gets you automatically eligible.
Yeah, just by buying a shirt. And just to answer that question. Yes, if you've bought a shirt already and it was August 1 or later this month, you're already there. We're just gonna We're just gonna pop names out of whatever, and then just whatever.
There
Pick
you
one.
go.
Yeah. So super pumped about that. Don't forget this Friday we have a piece of content going down. As we always do, it will be up there on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe, tell your friends, all that.
Live from the Koenig Wheel Studios, it's
No.
So good. Can you put the audio up too?
He's
hold
teasing.
on a second. We're gonna start it over again. You guys, for people watching on YouTube, this is a special treat. This is an intro. This is a brand new intro.
How can you tease it though?
For the hype is right.
Oh.
This is great.
Oh,
and now,
God.
Alex, cue that beautiful bean footage.
live from the Koenig Wheel Studios, it's
Oh,
Life is
God.
Right.
Oh
Five
no.
cars, 4 contestants,
Can you
and
hear
a
it?
whole lot of opinions.
It's not set up for us to hear it.
All right, go ahead.
Fantastic. Awesome.
That was, well, anyhow, so that was our gift to you for today. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. We will be back here next Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. Well, that's not. Yeah, no, we will. There'll be another podcast, 3 p.m. Eastern. And
I might not because I'm way too embarrassed now. But
it's fantastic. Listen, folks, if you subscribe, you can look forward to things like that. Cringeworthy is what we do here. Anyhow, we'll catch you back here. And don't forget, we're always live on Facebook and Instagram at 2 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday. That's it. Take care. Be good. Build car stuff. Talk to you later.